In an effort to disconnect from the urban routine and breathe in some fresh air, a group of friends decides to embark on a peaceful forest retreat. However, their plans are interrupted by an unexpected alien invasion, thrusting them into a fight for survival, unaware of the secret cosmic-scale plan they've become part of. In another setting, two astronauts are performing a spacewalk around the International Space Station. Without warning, they are surprised by a sudden communication failure, followed by a deafening bang that causes sharp pain. A bright explosion occurs, leaving them stranded in the void of space. Back on Earth, life seems to carry on. Three friends are preparing for a memorable trip. Rob and Brendan plan to introduce Charlie to Annie, a new member of the group, hoping to help Charlie recover from a breakup. The first stop is Rob's house, where they meet Kara, Rob's girlfriend, and Annie. Amid warm greetings and exchanged glances, Annie notices Charlie looking at a picture of someone on his phone. The group heads toward their destination, but makes an unexpected stop for fuel, leading to a disturbing incident. While Brendan explores the area with his camera, his attention is drawn to an old truck, under whose tarp something grotesque seems to be hiding, suggested by the smell of decay and suspicious bloodstains. A stranger surprises him, and after a brief confrontation, the man reveals himself to be just a local hunter with his fresh kill, a deer. Charlie intervenes to calm the situation. After this encounter, they resume their trip, finally reaching the isolated countryside house. Rob and Kara take care of the house's preparations, while Annie shows the surroundings to Charlie and Brendan. The trio walks to a nearby lake, where Brendan sets up his photography gear, eager to capture images of the nocturnal wildlife. Annie tries to get closer to Charlie again, but he remains resistant. Their exploration continues, and Brendan discovers a mysterious cabin hidden among the trees. Despite their hesitation, they all decide to investigate the interior of the abandoned structure, where they find unusual equipment for such a remote place: a Doppler radar and a military radio hidden under a sheet. As the dust stirs up, Annie begins to cough and struggles to breathe. Charlie becomes visibly concerned as she quickly reaches for her inhaler from her bag and uses it. Annie's condition improves immediately, but Charlie's relief fades when Brendan points to some photographs hanging on the cabin wall. One of the pictures reveals the hunter they met at the gas station, dressed in a military uniform in an old NASA photograph. Suddenly, the sound of an engine breaks the silence, alerting the trio. They see the hunter's truck abruptly pulling up outside. Quickly, they seek refuge at the back of the cabin, while the hunter climbs the porch steps and enters, noticing the presence of intruders. Finding the exposed military radio, he searches the cabin. They seize the moment to escape through the window, while he, furious, rushes to the truck and starts a chase. However, a fallen log in the path causes him to lose control and crash, allowing the friends to escape. Back at the lodge, the group tries to explain to Rob and Kara the tense adventure they've just experienced, but they are interrupted by the sound of the television. The news reports severe storms forming in various parts of the globe. Annie, relieved that her region is not affected for the time being, is startled by Brendan, who calls them to see the same threatening cloud formations rising above them. Rob, attempting to start the car for a possible escape, discovers the battery is dead. Meanwhile, about 200 kilometers away, in a military bunker known as Blackbird, the FBI and military discuss the enigmatic Project Blue Book. A prisoner, Romanovich, is brought in with handcuffs, displaying strange scars on his wrists. When asked to tell his story, he hesitates, saying they are not ready for what he has to say, but the colonel insists, showing particular interest. Back at the lodge, Rob informs Charlie of an alarming discovery. The car's hood had been tampered with, causing an intentional short circuit. Although they suspect the hunter, they decide not to alarm the women. In the middle of the forest, as the sky grows increasingly stormy, the hunter resumes his excavation with renewed intensity, sensing that time is running out. Romanovich, with a grave expression, warns the colonel, there is no way to fight them. The only option is to prepare for what comes after. Meanwhile, at the lakeside house, the atmosphere is noticeably calmer. Brendan is reviewing footage captured by cameras he set up in the forest. The others are enjoying a moment of relaxation in the jacuzzi, but now, as the day comes to an end, everyone gets ready to rest. Charlie and Annie retreat to a room where, for the first time, they speak privately. Charlie opens up and reveals that the young woman in the photograph was his girlfriend, who died in a tragic car accident 10 months ago, an accident for which he blames himself. Meanwhile, in another room, Rob and Kara share brief, lighthearted moments, but Kara notices her mother had tried to contact her multiple times. Simultaneously, the hunter in his cabin listens intently to the news while preparing his weapons, sharpening stakes and coating them with poison. One of the interviewees on TV, showing scars on his arms identical to Romanovich's, recounts an abduction experience. The hunter, barely reacting, briefly pauses his preparations upon hearing that a massive ship has appeared among the clouds. Armed with his poisoned stakes, he heads outside, hiding among the trees to watch the spaceship cutting through the clouds. Alien pods descend from the mothership as gaseous spheres are released, spreading through the atmosphere. One of them explodes near the hunter, causing him to convulse violently. In the bunker, a similar phenomenon occurs with Romanovich, who also convulses briefly. He quickly recovers and warns the military that they are aware of their presence there. The colonel tries to reassure him, but Romanovich, with indifference, says he's not concerned about his own safety. Back at the house, Kara, feeling uneasy, gets up and checks her phone, noticing several missed calls from her mother. She approaches the window and sees one of the bright red gas spheres falling from the sky, triggering a strange reaction within her. Rob, concerned, approaches her, but Kara suddenly collapses, alarming him. He calls for help. After a few tense moments, Kara awakens, much to everyone's relief. Brendan enters the room, urging everyone to see something on the camera footage. The image is still unclear, but a new photo finishes loading, clearly revealing the hunter. Enraged, Rob decides to go to the car to retrieve his gun. Unbeknownst to him, the hunter is watching from a distance. As Rob returns, he steps on a white sticky substance spread across the porch floorboards, and a disturbing noise comes from beneath, prompting him to crouch down and investigate further. Rob, heart racing and breathing heavily, locks eyes with a terrifying, unimaginable creature hiding under the porch. Inside, the tension thickens as an accidental gunshot shatters the night's silence, and Rob rushes back to the house, banging desperately on the window, begging for the door to be opened. Once inside, he's bombarded with questions. His excuse of tripping over isn't entirely convincing, and the atmosphere grows even more tense. Kara, driven by nervous energy, walks toward the window, ignoring Annie's pleas to step away. The red glow outside captivates her attention, and in a sudden moment of clarity, she begins recounting a forgotten memory, but is interrupted by the terrifying sight of the creature lurking outside the window. In shock, everyone ducks and turns off the lights, huddling together in the center of the room, where they spread out a map to devise an escape plan. Rob suggests using the car's charged battery to flee to the nearest town, despite Brendan pointing out the town is 2 hours away. Charlie proposes seeking help at the hunter's cabin, an idea Annie supports, reminding them of the radio they found there. Rob argues with Charlie, but the tension is interrupted when Kara faints again, pulling Rob's focus back to her condition. While they try to manage the situation, a subtle noise alerts them. Charlie, Annie, and Brendan investigate and find a strange, glowing red jellyfish floating inside the cabin. Outside, the hunter watches them, curious about the alien organism's behavior. Rob quickly coordinates Annie and Brendan to go to the shed and disconnect the car battery, while he stays behind to help Charlie with Kara. In the shed, Brendan takes charge of disconnecting the battery, and Annie takes the opportunity to use her inhaler, still shaken by the tension of the moment. When Rob and Charlie return, they discover that Kara has disappeared. The jellyfish-like creature is now floating in the room where Kara was, and both quickly crouch when the creature they saw earlier enters the house. Rob wants to shoot, but Charlie stops him, urging caution. They decide to follow the creature, but a noise makes them turn around. In a reflexive panic, Rob fires his gun, but when he lowers the flashlight, he realizes he has shot Kara. Charlie urges Rob to run as he carries Kara's lifeless body. They head to the garage to find Brendan and Annie, but upon arriving, they realize that Kara is no longer showing signs of life. Overcome with guilt and pain, Rob loses his mind. In desperation, he proposes using the others as a distraction for the creature. Rob, now unhinged, points the gun and orders Charlie, Annie, and Brendan to run toward the darkness of the forest. Taking advantage of a flash of red light penetrating the window, Charlie attacks Rob, fiercely struggling for the weapon. With a decisive move, he manages to knock Rob down. Seizing the moment of confusion, the trio runs out of the cabin in search of safety. However, Rob, unpredictable and still armed, suddenly appears on the road, blocking their path with his gun aimed at them. Charlie, in a sharp, evasive maneuver, swerves but ends up losing control of the vehicle, which crashes into a ditch. They manage to escape the car and find themselves under Rob's aim once again. As he cocks the gun, about to shoot, a spaceship suddenly descends, abducting him in a beam of light, to everyone's shock. Still dazed, Charlie, Annie, and Brendan run for the safety of the forest. Annie, out of breath, stops to use her inhaler, and while catching her breath, notices something resembling a hand hanging from a branch. As she investigates, the hand suddenly moves, causing a new panic. The group scatters. Disoriented, Charlie stumbles and rolls down a hill. Annie rushes back to help him, while Brendan continues alone until he spots the hunter's cabin. On the way, he falls into a bear trap, his scream of pain echoing through the forest. Annie and Charlie, guided by the screams, find the injured Brendan. Annie runs to the hunter's cabin seeking help. There, she manages to contact the U.S. Army, which provides instructions for an extraction. Once communication ends, Annie realizes the creature is in the cabin and runs back to meet up with Charlie and Brendan. She finds them with the hunter who, surprisingly, offers to help them. The hunter leads the trio to a safe location and reveals that he used them as bait to capture the creature, but had no intention of harming them. He treats Brendan's injured leg and explains that despite appearances, his truck is inoperable. He offers his boat as a means of escape, but insists they can only leave at dawn. He explains that sunlight interferes with the creature's metabolism, making them slower and less dangerous, thus providing a safer chance to escape at daybreak. Charlie questions the depth of the hunter's knowledge about the enigmatic creatures. Remaining calm, the hunter reveals his own abduction, showing scars marking his chest and arms, silent witnesses of his ordeal. He explains that the abductions have been happening for 60 years, setting the stage for a larger invasion that very night. Faced with the group's disbelief, he challenges his credibility by telekinetically making books fly across the room. He continues, telling them that over the years, fragments of his memory have been restored, including memories that did not belong to him, possibly neurally implanted. Through these memories, he gained extensive understanding of the extraterrestrial beings, claiming that they have manipulated human development from the start, abducting and enhancing individuals to steer the evolution of the species. Annie, incredulous, questions the motives behind these actions, to which the hunter compares it to humanity's indifference when using less developed species in scientific experiments. Charlie criticizes him for possessing such knowledge without sharing it widely, but the hunter retorts that his warnings were ignored, attributed to the delusions of a disturbed mind. Driven by deep resentment, he expresses a desire for revenge against the creatures for having violated his life. With a grim air, he withdraws to examine the captured creature, taking it to the back room for dissection. Meanwhile, the environment around them begins to vibrate. A red glow emanates from the cracks in the walls, soon replaced by intense lights and piercing sounds. The hunter briefly returns, advising them to stay inside the cabin while he investigates the source of the commotion. In the back room, a transition of lights from red to blue provokes convulsions in Brendan, followed by an explosion of white light that temporarily blinds them. When Annie and Charlie's vision is restored, Brendan has disappeared. One of the creatures enters the cabin to inspect, forcing them to find a hiding spot. Seizing the distraction, Charlie dismantles part of the wall, creating an escape route. Outside, they find the hunter, who immediately assumes defense, firing his shotgun until the ammunition runs out and then switching to a pistol. With a precise shot, he strikes the creature. He hands the boat keys to Charlie and Annie, urging them to flee while they still can, promising to cover their retreat as they escape. Charlie and Annie struggle desperately and make it to the lake. Charlie, cautious, suggests they stay hidden among the trees, but Annie, driven by the urgency to escape, runs directly to the boat. However, an asthma attack overcomes her, leaving her gasping and desperate for air. Charlie, carrying Annie's inhaler, rushes to her aid. She manages to catch her breath after a few essential puffs. As a helicopter hums in the distance, a glimmer of hope lights up Annie's face, but this feeling is quickly replaced by terror as an alien spaceship appears above them. The situation worsens when Annie starts convulsing, and amidst the chaos, both are teleported to an unknown alien chamber. Charlie wakes up in a hostile and strange environment, surrounded by cocoons and guarded by red jellyfish-like creatures. As he tries to free Brendan, he horrifically discovers that his friend has been transformed into a human-machine chimera. Overcome with panic, Charlie backs away, finding Kara and Rob, who have also been partially transformed into cybernetic entities. Rob's hostility becomes an additional barrier for Charlie, who desperately needs to find Annie. Hearing her call out, he maneuvers to escape Rob, temporarily incapacitating him. When he finally locates Annie, submerged in another pod, she reveals that she has lost sensation in her legs. As he tries to rescue her, disaster strikes. Wires detach from her back, triggering another violent seizure in Annie. Meanwhile, the alien creatures, alerted by Rob's damaged pod, intensify their search for the intruder. In a desperate act, Charlie uses a knife to defend himself, but the fight is futile. The creature overpowers him, forcing him back into the pod. He wakes up, finding himself trapped, now part of a sinister alien experiment. A threatening drill-like device, emitting electric sparks, is positioned towards his head. As it approaches, a visceral terror grips Charlie, culminating in an anguished scream that echoes through the confined space of the alien chamber. Charlie experiences a disturbing vision. He finds himself standing before Rachel, his deceased girlfriend, whom he desperately wants to apologize to. She asks him to let her go, offering a moment of emotional catharsis that is tragically interrupted by the brutal reality of the alien experiment. The sharp pain of the drill piercing his skull causes Charlie to wake up, this time in the forest. Naked and marked by scars, he finds his clothes neatly folded beside him. Annie, also freed, awakens a short distance away, ignoring her inhaler as she stands. Apparently, the aliens had returned not only them, but all the abductees, including Rob and Brendan, who are now working to get the car out of the ditch. Brendan, unusually energized, comments on his newfound strength, a mysterious side effect of his own experience. The group returns to the lakeside house, and life seems to resume as if nothing had happened, with Kara rejoining them as if the horrifying events were just a distant dream. However, the ramifications of their abductions are quickly brought to light when military authorities, monitoring the ship that abducted them, confirm that all humans have been returned. News spreads, and a mandatory quarantine is announced for everyone who had contact with the creatures. On their way home, they are stopped at a police checkpoint, where an officer notices the scars on Annie's and Kara's chests. As they are asked to step out of the vehicle, the tension escalates quickly. From the moment the soldier receives orders to eliminate them, the situation deteriorates. Rob is shot in the chest as he moves to protect the group, and Kara is hit in the thigh, collapsing to the ground in a desperate attempt to escape. As the soldier pursues him, a police officer shoots Annie, hitting her in the shoulder. Charlie reacts swiftly, using telekinetic powers to disarm the officer and retaliate with a shot. At that moment, the hunter intervenes, quickly eliminating the other officers and soldiers from a distance. A soldier tries to shoot Brendan, but he vanishes instantly and reappears after the soldier turns toward Annie. Charlie seizes the distraction, shooting the soldier in the head. When another officer attacks, Charlie confronts him with surprising strength and snaps his neck. Standing up, he sees the fallen bodies of his adversaries and exchanges a glance of recognition with the hunter, who soon walks away. Meanwhile, Charlie helps Annie up. They briefly observe the bodies of Kara and Rob, but Annie insists they keep moving. Moments later, Kara miraculously recovers, her wound disappears, and she heals Rob. Charlie, Annie, and Brendan move away, entering the forest, aware that their lives have changed forever as another storm begins to form in the sky. If you enjoyed this movie, I recommend watching this other one here as well. I guarantee you'll like it. See you there.